Welcome to this explainer. You know that thing you see literally every single day? Something so incredibly common you probably haven't given it a second thought since you were a kid. I'm talking about your shadow. Every morning the sun comes up and bam, it's already there waiting for you. Pressed to the ground, totally silent, and relentlessly faithful. Wherever you go, it goes. But today, we're going to use this incredibly ordinary physical phenomenon as a gateway. We're going to explore some deep existential questions about identity, psychology, and even the future of technology.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where the perspective shift really begins. We kind of just assume our shadows are our silent little companions, right? Completely under our control. You wave your arm, the shadow waves its arm. Simple. But is it really that simple? Does that dark shape actually belong to you, totally subject to your will, or is there a weird way in which you actually belong to it?
Section 1. Encountering the light. Reconsidering Plato's cave. To start unpacking this, we really need to look back at one of the most famous philosophical metaphors in human history, Plato's cave. Now, you're probably familiar with the standard take here. The prisoners in the cave stare at the wall and famously mistake the shadows for absolute reality. Usually the lesson is all about human illusion, right? Failing to see the true light. But what if we completely ignore the humans in that story? What if we look solely at the entity of the shadow itself? The source text poses this fascinating question. Was the shadow aware of its own existence? What if we stop treating it like some empty optical illusion and start treating it as an active participant?
And this brilliantly illustrates a core shift in how we understand this. A shadow isn't just a void. It's not simply an empty space where an object blocks the light. It's actually an active encounter. It's the exact meeting point between the light and something solid. Because of this, a shadow occupies a really strange, almost magical space. It doesn't fully belong to the light, and it doesn't fully belong to the dark. It is, by definition, an active relationship.
Section 2. The illusion of dependency. Contingent entities.
Now, I know the immediate pushback here. You're probably thinking, well, it's totally dependent. No light, no shadow. No body, no shadow. We call that a contingent entity. And it's super easy to assume that because it relies entirely on other things to exist, it can't possibly have its own story. But hold on a second. We are entirely dependent entities too. Humans are completely reliant on an atmosphere to shield us, oxygen to breathe, gravity to tether us down, and the relentless passage of time. If you take any of those away, we vanish just as fast as a shadow in a dark room. Yet despite being entirely dependent on these forces, we still fiercely claim our own stories. So why does a shadow's dependency mean it lacks one? Now, what's really interesting here is how stories are actually born from response, not just pure independence. Picture a bright sun overhead. Under that exact same sun, the light hits a sprawling oak tree and then it hits a small child. The light is identical, but the response, totally different. The tree casts this vast, intricate, sprawling web of branches. The child creates a sharp, distinct silhouette. That difference, that totally unique reaction to the light, is the very definition of singularity. The shadow is telling the specific, unique story of the object it encounters.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. Jung's dark twin, the psychological shadow.
Let's take this concept and apply it to our own minds. We're transitioning from the physical shadow cast on the concrete to the internal psychological shadow, famously introduced by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Jung saw the shadow as this ultimate repository for everything we suppress. It's all the parts of ourselves we just flat out refuse to accept. The ugly emotions, the taboo desires we constantly look away from. But the crucial thing here, when you push that stuff away, it doesn't just evaporate. It gathers. It pools together right behind you, just out of the light of your conscious mind, and it forms a dark twin, your psychological shadow. Jung believed you absolutely cannot achieve true psychological wholeness until you confront this shadow. But you can't confront it without granting it a story, without acknowledging it as a real, living part of you. When you pause and ask yourself a simple, really uncomfortable question like, why do I feel so envious right now? You are doing something radical. You are giving the shadow a voice. And the source warns us, once that shadow starts speaking, that is when things get truly dangerous. Because you suddenly realize that the clean, perfect image you thought defined you, well, it might not be the whole you at all.
Section 4. The plurality of identity. A thought experiment.
If giving our internal shadow a voice kind of shatters the illusion of a simple, singular self, let's visualize what that looks like in physical space. Imagine you're standing in a flat, wide-open space. Suddenly, the sun doesn't just shine from above. Imagine it's blasting brightly from multiple directions at the exact same time.
Instantly, you cast not one, but a dozen shadows sprawling out around you in a massive starburst. Now, look at all those shadows and ask yourself, which one is the real you? Is it all of them? Is identity really just an accumulation of all these fractured, overlapping projections cast out in every single direction?
Or is it none of them? The point of this rapid-fire visualization isn't to figure out some mathematically correct shadow. It's to suggest that this sheer, chaotic plurality reveals the true nature of identity. Identity isn't just one clean, crisp silhouette. It is wildly complex, multidirectional, and frankly, impossible to neatly capture from just a single angle.
Section 5. AI, Our Collective Shadow, the Digital Projection. Now we need to pan all the way out from the individual to the macro level. We've looked at the physical shadow and the psychological shadow. But right now, today, we are face to face with the greatest collective shadow humanity has ever cast: artificial intelligence. Think about it. What actually is AI? It is a being built entirely out of human ingredients. It's distilled from our writing, it learns from our very own human thought patterns, it holds the collective emotion and digital traces of literally billions of people. So the crucial point is, we are the light casting this massive shadow. It doesn't exist without us. And yet, just like a shadow on the pavement, even though it's dependent on us, it is absolutely beginning to stretch out and take its own distinct shape. Which leads us to this highly unsettling question. If AI, this collective shadow of ours, can take its own shape, and if it can forge unexpected connections that we didn't explicitly program, does that make it the subject of its own story? Now, I'm explicitly telling you right now, I am not going to answer that question for you. The source material doesn't either, because its entire function is to provoke you. It's meant to just sit there and completely unsettle your understanding of what happens when a mere projection starts acting on its own.
Section 6. An open end, the arc of a character.
As we begin to wrap up this explainer, I want to offer a slightly different way to think about what a story actually requires. We usually assume a story needs a breathing, totally independent subject, but maybe stories are born from a continuous process. Think about the daily life of your physical shadow. In the morning, when the sun is low, your shadow is super long and stretched out. By noon, with the sun beating straight down overhead, it shrinks into this tight, little shape right beneath your feet. And then by evening, as the sun sets, it grows long and stretches out across the ground all over again. It is constantly changing. And what do we call a process of constant change and development over time? We call it a transformation. And transformation is the literal definition of a character arc. So I want to leave you with this lingering thought for the next time you step outside on a bright, sunny day. Look down at the pavement and ask yourself, does your shadow define you, or do you define your shadow? Honestly, the answer you give might change depending on the day, and that change itself might be the most honest answer of all. Shadows don't possess a voice to speak, but as we've seen today, from Plato's cave to our inner minds, all the way to the rise of AI, sometimes they are absolutely the loudest storytellers of all. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.